Thanks for the sub. Or the membership. Apologies for being slightly late today. I was fixing my mic. I changed the cable. I did lots of different stuff. And then I found out it was the input volume on Windows, which I have not touched. So I don't know how that happened. What are we playing today? Today, every Thursday, is Indies Under the Knife. This is where I stream and give feedback on some games that have been sent to me. Sometimes there's stuff that's been sent recently in the last month. Sometimes they're from way back. I did have 4 games lined up for today. I just did 5 and said 4, but 4 games. One of them I've taken off Rando Bounce because I didn't have a key for it, and it's gone live since I received it. So I tend to try and play games that's still in development. If something goes live while it's in the queue, and I've still got access to it, then I'll play it and check it out. Even though I generally don't play released games on this stream. And today, what are we playing? Are we going to play DaVinci Resolve? Are we going to play GitHub? Are we going to play Game Maker? No, I've already played Game Maker this week. We're checking out 3 games that are either Bullet Heavens or Bullet Hells. Different types of games. Bullet Hells, shoot 'em ups where lots of bullets are trying to kill you. Bullet Heaven, shoot 'em up where player has got lots of bullets. I put them together. It's not really the same genre. We're going to check out Distractor and Blood Moon Survivors and Drift. And I think Blood Moon Survivors looks like the closest thing to Vampire Survivors. We've got even like the kind of same color palette here. It looks quite promising. Looks like they've got a kind of good sense of what is appealing about this type of game. You are a lunar knight of the Blood Moon. Tonight is your night. Oh, that's good to hear, Brainoid. Good luck on the move. Well done on the move, Kitten. Hi, good morning. We're going to do some Blood Moon stuff. It looks like it has aiming, though. And I'm always a little bit wary because I think these games are about the farm more than the skill. But we'll see. Kind of charming art style. It's got a little bit of Slay the Spire kind of illustration style. So yeah, let's give this one a go. I think this one is not out yet. Have a video coming out tomorrow about demos and what demos are for and what they're not for, and the distinction between, you know, doing early alpha playtesting and making a commercial demo which is supposed to advertise something that's finished or nearly finished, and how lots of people don't really recognize this distinction and how it sort of can potentially harm your chances. I think that's the last video I'm going to do for a while that is really focused on businessy type stuff, because I just don't find it interesting to talk about. I think the sort of people that are drawn to hearing about game dev from the business side are often a bit driven by delusion, because you should really have a good game before you worry about any of that kind of stuff. But people jump straight into the business bit and they're like, well, I spent 1,000 hours making my game, so it must be good. And that's just not how that works. Do you consent to letting this game balancing purposes? Yes. Okay. I really think you don't need a disclaimer on a demo. You can just put the stuff in the game like this. It's fine. Shadeswood, undiscovered, more stages in full release. This feels a little bit cheap. I would try and let people know how many stages there are. I think when you just make it a vague amount of content, then the demo is going to feel dodgy to people. It's going to feel like it might be lying. It says more content, and then there's one more content. Nights last 10 minutes, elite and boss, enemies deal... I don't know what any of this means yet. Okay, I click on the level, We go to level. I click on there. That wasn't super clear that I'm supposed to click one of these. I guess it's got the arrow above it. Airman? Can only be airman. Pick this weapon to earn. Okay. A lot of decisions and a lot of data on the screen before we get to do anything. My name is Voynich Shade. Welcome to my woods. It's a blood moon tonight. If you wish to survive, you'll need to fight like a lunar knight. Fortunately for you, I am an excellent teacher. I've cast an invincibility spell until you get the feel for the basics. WASD, aim, attack. Okay. Kill 10 enemies to get a feel for your weapon. Okay, so it's a melee weapon. It's got that kind of slightly ranged arc thing. I'm already kind of feeling a potential UX problem with this game, because being able to aim is one thing. I can see how that would be appealing, but you have to click and hold to fire, and it's like, what is the purpose of that? Okay, perfect swap. So we've got a skill mechanic for changing weapon that allows you to get some sort of bonus. Red outlines resist melee, white outlines resist projectile. Use the right weapon. Okay, that's interesting. So white is projectile, red is red. White needs to be taken out close range, and red needs to be taken out with melee. But yeah, you have to like click and hold to make the character attack. And whenever I have that, whenever I think, oh, you need to click to attack or you need to click and hold to attack, I kind of think, well, what percentage of the time am I attacking? And if it's more than 90%, then it may as well be automatic, you know? Because now you've basically put my hand in a stress position of like holding the mouse down, holding the mouse down for the entire game. You have to think of the ergonomics of you have to think of the ergonomics of your controls. You can select a power-up for one of your weapons. Okay. We're getting to do some creativity with how our weapons and power-ups go together, which I like. Select a power-up and press the accept button. Okay. Okay, so this is going to just basically affect one of my weapons based on whether it's the projectile weapon or the melee weapon. I like the swap mechanic. That's cool. We've got evolution pairs of weapons like we do in Vampire Survivors, so that's kind of how you get the depth in that game. Because just the moving around killing stuff is not that deep, but when you combine that with the fact that you can sort of build towards specific loadouts. From now on, killing enemies will fill your dual wield meters. Killing enemies with your melee weapon fills the left bar. Killing enemies with the projectile weapon fills the right bar. I filled them as much as I could. Finish them by killing enemies with both weapons. Okay. Switch to melee. You're now primed to activate dual wield. Okay. Holding right trigger to activate it. So I hold right mouse, and then I can use them both at the same time. Okay, cool. And a perfect weapon swap while dual wielding pulls in all of the XP. That's cool. They've basically taken one of the favorite features from Vampire Survivors and turned it into something you can do regularly. Just pull everything in. But I think, well, I'm gonna hold reserve judgment for a minute, but I have a real big concern with this game so far. Everything is quite polished. The tutorial is very well done. Even the tutorial even sort of has a voice of the teacher telling you to try out your weapon and stuff like that. It feels good. Like the narrative design of the tutorial is good. The game feel is good. I like the swap mechanic. I like that you get a little bonus when you're swapping between weapons. I think it's going to be hard for me to memorize which color corresponds to melee enemies versus ranged enemies. But my big concern is really in two parts. One is that I'm having to hold the mouse button down for an entire game, which is just a sort of a bit of a physical nightmare. And like, I don't even have problems with my hands, but for someone who has a weaker hand or something, it's just unnecessary. You know, clicking and dragging as a mouse action is something we do in short bursts. It's not something you do for 10 minutes. And there is very little kind of cause for stopping while you're playing this game. You can't make a poker joke at me, Brainoid. I don't know my poker. It's one of the reasons why Balatro bounced off me so hard. It's just like, oh, I have to learn how to play poker to play this game. Absolutely not. I have a... excellent auto attack. That's what we need. Because... if you just think of the... we've got auto aim as well. I'm going to try it with just auto attack and not auto aim. Because I think the thing about aiming in these games... I've played a few games that try to introduce aiming. And... it basically raises the amount of concentration you need to be putting in at any given moment of the game. And then I think the game has to give somewhere else, because playing like a long game like Vampire Survivors, like a 20-minute game, where you have to concentrate a little bit harder than Vampire Survivors, it's like, okay, now we need to make the game shorter, or something needs to give somewhere, because that game is almost perfect in certain ways, and adding any kind of complexity to the controls kind of means that you need to give people a break in a particular way. Okay. Got some sort of freezing ability coming out occasionally now. So is that specifically attached to my melee strike? And we've also got... I don't know how the health works. If those are, you know... when we see hearts like that, you're usually used to them going down in full hearts or a half a heart at a time and stuff. So I don't know how kind of fractional the health is. But it does seem like it's a game where we really need to be paying attention for a lot of the time. Split shot, that sounds fun. I'm just going by vibes on the abilities. Like, the thing I would normally do as a player, and I just try and copy when I playtest something, is if there are options to make between the build stuff, I tend to just go with what looks cool to start off with. Because there are players who will do that anyway. So you may as well test that way, because otherwise players that just go for something that looks or sounds cool will end up disappointed if it's, like, balanced in such a way that that doesn't work. Okay, taking the reds out with the arrows. I remember that that's the thing. And now I need to switch to... oh. Need to switch to... get my melee bar up. I want to get that dual wield activated again. The colour palette sort of reminds me a little bit of Moon Hunters. I do wonder if it's a bit low contrast for what I need to be paying attention to. Like if I squint, I sort of lose some of the enemies here, and they're the really important bit of information. Right, I need to get in with the melee attack. Kind of glad that we've only got 3 games this morning now, because I can give each one a little bit longer. You do really need to play these for a little while to get a feel for them. I like most of what this is doing. I'm gonna play it like this, and then I'm gonna try it with auto aim on afterwards. Uh-oh. It's a naughty skeleton in a shell type thing. I need to... That treasure is probably treasure, isn't it? That's what that usually means. Okay, what do... Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember what I need to do now. Right click. Am I dual wielding? Yeah, I am. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Kind of ending up doing what I tend to do in Vampire Survivors, which is just kind of go in a direction and then try and remember to loop back so you get the stuff. But we've also got a triggerable pick up everything with the way dual wield works in this, so... I find I'm losing the cursor a little bit sometimes. I'm having a little bit of a problem with a few visual contrast things across the game. We'll work out what those are in a minute, but... The pixel art's lovely. The kind of character of the enemies is really nice. I just think sometimes they get a bit lost. Even just like upping the contrast on all the enemies by like 25% or something would help that. But it's difficult because then you're not going to be able to see those highlights that tell you what they're strong to as well. But it's always going to be the challenge with one of these games. I think we had a big craze of these and like people developing these, and a lot of it came out of people thinking, oh, I can do one of them, it looks relatively simple, but the amount of care and attention you have to put into the sort of UX and how things are communicated and all of that is really, really high. Like, this is, for all intents and purposes, if you took like a random gamer and you showed them the art from this and you showed them the fact that the characters are animated properly and everything, people would go, oh, that looks better than Vampire Survivors. But then actually playing it, there's some kind of visual noise issues and some things not standing out as much as they could do, which are making the game harder to play than they should do. And that's a bit of a problem because we're required to pay more attention in this. We're required to, you know, focus on our aim and doing these like timing mini games and stuff. So that means it's even more important to be able to see what everything is. I'm not having too much of a problem with it, but I think the color of the enemies is just a little bit too close to the ground. Okay, I'm gonna charge my laser in a minute. Love these freaky little wizard guys. Great. Yeah, so I think there are lots of visual decisions, like the torch is a good one, that are kind of made to give the world life and make it feel like a kind of real place, or at least a real cartoon place. And on the enemies, that's great because it draws attention to them a little bit. You can look at the screen and the things that are moving around just draw a bit more attention, but they're still a bit faded and pastel, and that makes them kind of hard to see. I'm not finding the torches too distracting. But they are an example of a thing where there's an animation applied to something that you don't really need to pay attention to, you know? You could say that... I think the reason why I can't play traditional bullet hells very well is they require... Like, in a traditional bullet hell... Well, there's loads of bullets flying around the screen and you're dodging them. You have to pay very, very close attention for quite long periods of time. I'm not very good at that. Like, so like an ADHD thing. But what tends to happen in like a Survivor's like is that goes away because actually what you're doing is making micro judgments about which side of the screen to move to, where's the safest place, and are you basically doing the riskier thing or the safer thing of walking away from the crowd or walking into the crowd to collect stuff. And that's like the only decision you're making based on looking at all the information on the screen. This is kind of adding some complexity, and it's taking us a bit further back towards what a classic bullet hell was like, because we're having to pay a little bit more attention on trying to stay alive, and less on just kind of collecting all the shiny kind of thing. And that's okay. I'm not saying my feedback here isn't let's try and fit this in a genre box nicely, but I do think sometimes if you put more complexity or more need to focus in a particular area, it has to give somewhere else. Increased burn damage. I don't think I have anything that does burn damage. I'm going to go for electrocute because I like it thematically, but I don't know if I have either of those damage types. Really like the kind of range of creepy, weird, undead things we're getting. Yeah, I'll go and check those arrows out in a minute. I would, like, one small UX change I would make is I would honestly take all of those warning lines and make them red, just because that universally reads as, like, you can't get confused and think, oh, it's blue or green, so it's a friend, you know? Because I've seen that a few times. You've got the kind of, I think it was Kitten the other day called them danger puddles, where maybe that's like a general gaming term, but you know, like those targets on the ground earlier, they were pink and then it was a blue projectile and it was just like lots of different colors. And again, it feels like it's doing the classic bullet hell thing of trying to overwhelm us. And that's, you know, in that genre of game, that is the source of difficulty, is just being sort of sensorially overwhelmed by the game so that it makes it harder to concentrate. But in Bullet Heavens, it's like the overwhelmingness is meant to be kind of, it's the player's power that is the overwhelming thing, and the more visually confusing the screen gets, it's usually actually a sign of the player is upgraded loads. So they work a bit more, they work less like action games and more like incrementals, really, where it's a efficiency puzzle of what's the best set of upgrades rather than... This feels very like it feels like it could fit very neatly in the space between those things, but I think some of the more survivory action game type stuff, like these lines, just make it all red. Make it all red, make the enemies a little bit higher contrast so they're easier to see. I know you've got this kind of Moon Hunters type pastel style, and that's really, really nice, and it works very, very well for the backgrounds, but what I would do is keep this kind of low contrast pastel for the backgrounds and just make the enemies a little bit higher contrast so we get a little bit, they just sort of stick out a little bit more and you can read the screen easier. Who's this? I rescue you? How do I rescue you? Do I need to blow up the thing you're in? I don't know how to rescue the soldiers, so I won't. Okay, we'll do some dual wielding. Whee! Love the god rays. The grey in that boss's health bar also didn't read as an empty. It read as another colour, so I kind of thought maybe there was some weird armor mechanic going on, but it was just the empty health bar. So just there we go. Zone Rust Sands, my favourite. Unlock the rapier weapon. Right, let's give it one more go. It's pretty good. I just think you have like a high cost of player attention span on this one. So anything you can do to just make it visually easier to read the game is going to help. I like the core mechanics. I like the switching. The feeling of building your character and getting all of these different stuff, you know, all of the different projectiles and stuff that are sort of stacked on top of those two weapons you switch between is really neat. It feels like it's a very sweet spot in terms of doing all of the stuff that Vampire Survivors does well and trying some different stuff out at the same time. It feels like you've got that kind of, I would say, like a 70-30 split between those things, which is a very kind of sensible route to go down. I like the art style. I love the world building and the characters. I think we've got some really neat little monsters here. I just need to be able to see them better. And putting a shadow behind them is probably not going to be very performant with a game with lots of stuff on screen. So just making them a little bit easier to see, whatever way you can do that without slowing the game down, you know. Okay. I'm going to be Airman, but we're going to... Available for purchase in Blessings. Oh, I need to go in there. Okay. I'm gonna purchase it. I don't think I can afford anything else. Ah, what should we get? Health regeneration. I mean, that's always good. Starting health. Guard. Oh, we can afford loads of stuff. Let's just get loads of stuff. Yeah, it might be. I think one of the reasons why games so often start off with like in Hades, for example, you've got a red and white character, right? And then the starting level is green. I think lots of games, it's like they use green or a cold color as the starting level because it contrasts with their main character. And I think we actually just had a purple character and a purple level, so... You know, people are used to thinking level 1 green because green is like friendly and natural and stuff. But if you've got a hot coloured character and a cold coloured level, or vice versa, a cold coloured character and a hot coloured level, it makes it easier to see. And that might not matter all the way through a game, but it matters more when someone is just learning the game. Which is why, you know, Binding of Isaac, we can have these sort of like drab colors of the levels early on because we need to be able to see all the red projectiles and stuff, but then we can have a red level later on in the game because making the game harder to read doesn't matter so much when it's late in the game and players really know what they're doing. I do find this easier to see what's going on. I think there's just a better distinction between these basic main enemies in the background on this level. What do I want? Melee attack speed, permafrost, poison pool. I don't want poison pool. I had that last time. Okay, let's do the old switcheroo. Feels a bit easier to waste your range shots, because if you're using the range shots and you don't fire them into a crowd, you have a good chance of just shooting them past people. Ah. Boomerang. Boomerang. Killing enemies with melee permanently increases your melee damage. That's cool. Yeah, I love the engine building going on with some of these weapon upgrades. I didn't pay very close attention to it in the first run, but... So, I'm upgrading my melee whenever I last hit an enemy with it now, which is cool. Getting a lot of melee damage this time. Throw out and pull back shurikens that deal... Yeah, we'll get shuriken with our boomerangs. I'm working on a new build. It's called A Guy Who Likes to Throw Things at People. That's a new character class. Gonna try and introduce it to all games, actually. I've got a D&D Beyond module that I'm making. Just guy who likes to throw stuff. I feel like there's probably a monk subclass. Some kind of like circus monk would be a D&D character that likes to throw stuff. Okay, performing a perfect weapon switch has a percentage chance to heal half a heart of missing health. Yeah, that's good. I need that. I need that. Let's get some projectile stuff, because I've been neglecting that, I think. I'm not making these switches very well. Not making the switches very well at all. This is neat. I think the second level gives a better impression of the game in terms of just how easy it is to play and see what you're doing. Backhand. Right, I want to try. I want to see what it's like with auto-aim on. So I'm just playing sort of classic Vampire Survivors now, almost. So it's good to have these things as options, but the thing is, people always take your default option as like the way the game is meant to be played. So I'm playing it without the mouse now. I'm not aiming. Character is aiming for me. It's still pretty intense. Then the problem is, I'm not using the mouse, so if I want to dual wield, I need to touch the mouse to do the right click to trigger that. Which is slightly awkward to then have the mouse button for one thing and not be using it the rest of the time. Backhand. Shinies. Perfect weapon switch has a percentage chance to gain 1 more armor. I keep forgetting to weapon switch. I should just be doing it constantly, really, I think. Got a couple of things that trigger on a weapon switch, so... on the old switcheroo. Yeah, it's difficult because... like, I often think go with whatever default will be the most accessible to the most people, but there will be a subtype of players that find the increased interactivity really appealing, and you don't want to hide that option from them. So, I would treat it like, you know when you get like a difficulty choice on the start of a game, and they present it as, I've played this type of game before, blah blah blah. And you could come up with like auto attack, auto aim, just have them as options, like present people with the choice straight away, and then like a couple of sentences explaining why you would want to make each choice. I'd have it default to the easy Vampire Survivors mode where they're both ticked. And then I would put, you know, you can turn these off for a more challenging experience. And then people can turn them off there and then. And then at least if they've chosen to have the more challenging experience, then they've chosen it. But you also haven't hidden it from them, because there will be a type of player that really wants that. I find the... if you think of like aiming as a skill check, which it is, right? It's a constant little skill check of what you're being asked to do to not die. If you think of how that works in shooting games, is you have an ebb and flow of how much you need to shoot and when you need to aim and stuff. And if you had like, imagine playing a light gun game in the arcade, and there are no down periods where you're moving from one thing to the next, and you're just bam, 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 bam for like 10 minutes. There's no point where you're like taking cover, or it's just so tiring. And it might be one of those things where you need to save people from themselves, because they'll think, oh yeah, I prefer this version because there's more to do, and then they'll just sort of wear themselves out on it very quickly. So you've got to do a lot of that kind of managing of people's energy and attention, I think. I think it's fun in both modes, but I can tell that personally I would just leave it like this after a while. Because even this with the skill swap that's enough of an innovation to make this feel like it's got something else. Like, I've played lots of Bullet Heaven games that don't even get the basics of Vampire Survivors right. They don't have enough enemies, or the weapons that you choose don't feel different enough from each other. It feels like you've got all of that very, you know, it's a game that shows a good understanding of why people like Vampire Survivors. And then you've done a couple of innovations on that as well. And I don't need all of them. But yeah, I would present them as options. Default to the simpler version, but try not to hide it away in a menu, because if people don't know it's there, they won't use it. Who's that? Are they like scorpion type things? I think that's a health potion round there. So there are goals around the map. There are those arrows. I don't know. I'm trying to think back to what Vampire Survivors was like for me in the first sort of 5 hours or so. I remember those kind of map tags didn't come in for a while. And I think part of that is you're really just getting used to doing the basic activity. And I don't know. I think if someone is committed enough to play this for a few hours, then they will eventually start paying attention to those arrows. But also, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do once I get there. I was sort of weapon swapping on top of him to see if that did anything. Let's go and check out the other. Boomerang. The big treasure chest with an eyeball. Should I be concerned about the eyeball? Okay, cool. Always going to go with the rate of fire, I think. Some little raider dudes. Okay. So it's like an Overwatch area capture type circle. You can go and see it again. Oh, I see. Yeah, it is filling up. Yeah, you can see it pretty well when the area is clear. As soon as there's other stuff competing for your attention, it gets really really hard to see. Right, I'm going to move on to the next one. That's pretty great. I think that's good. It's in a state where I feel like most of the things that I talked about that I personally struggled with, and the possible solutions are very small things. It's not like a fundamental, oh, this game can't work type thing. It's just tweaks. The visual problem completely went away in the second level. Some of that will have been because I was playing the game longer, but I do think the color value of the dudes in purple on the lilac background in the first level was just too low. That was completely gone in the second one. So neat. I like that. That's Blood Moon Survivors. The demo for Blood Moon Survivors. We're going to check out Distractor next, which is I think this is like a trad bullet, a bullet hell, a roguelike bullet hell, in a sort of little arena with some skill trees. Let's check this out. So this one is out now. I don't usually play games that are out, but I think it was submitted a while ago, like a few months back. Apophanism. I'm not sure. When did you send it in? Because I've scheduled this. I schedule these things like a month in advance, and I just don't have a way of catching everything that I see as well. It may have just been that I went down the list, picked a few things, and then when I had enough for a stream, I didn't carry on looking for things in that genre. So, these are funny weapon concepts. Don't really know what they're going to do. They made a monster. Now they want me to keep it distracted long enough for them to find a way to stop it. Okay. That's what Side-Eye does. This is flavor text. This isn't telling me how to play the game. So it's like this screen. It's giving me some goals. I need to research a rank. I need to discover a thing. But there's basically no information that I can use on my first run on this screen that makes sense. Right, we're WASDing. We're spacing to jump. And right, we're trying not to get hit. XP is giving us powers at the end of the round. Okay. Are these guys okay. So I selected those eyes, and now they are hurting me. That's strange. I'm gonna go back because I need to try and understand what is going on here. I start a level, I choose a thing, and that is the enemy in the level, right? So it says select starting attack, but I think I'm selecting the attack of the enemy. I think a game has a sort of budget of weirdness of how much stuff is there in your game that people are going to be unfamiliar with or find confusing. And you need to be aware of what those things are and where they are. And we've just encountered quite a lot of them in a short period of time. I've played some sort of boss rush games that use this centered around the middle type camera thing. It's feeling a little bit awkward here. Dividers spawn in between lanes. Okay, they don't feel like lanes to move on. I'm going to get some maximum health. I'm going to get some dodge. Okay, yeah. So is that something that hurts me if I go into it? It says lanes, but they don't seem to stick to the lines. Like visually they... Okay, so these dark brown lines are the lanes. And then... So I'm adding more enemies to dodge, and then I'm getting an upgrade myself. So when I move in or out, I move onto one of these brown lines. And then I move along. It feels almost like doing one of those like rolling ball puzzles with a circular labyrinth where you're turning it round to try and get the ball out. I'm just going to pick random stuff for now because the base game is so interesting and weird that I can't even think about what the upgrades are yet. Visually, the lanes are confusing because I think most people, if they saw a dark brown line and a light brown line, they would assume that the light brown line was like a path and the brown was mud around it. So I would invert the colors of this arena because, I mean, we're just so used to seeing that, and it's very confusing initially to see that the pale brown is the gap and the dark brown is the path. It's just, there's just too many weird things at once here, right? It's conceptually a cool idea. We're running around in an arena, enemies spawn on lines, and we're kind of upgrading the enemy with, it's like we're building a JRPG boss and then trying to dodge it. That's all conceptually really cool, but you need to make it easy on people, and those little decisions like what color things are and stuff like that, try and do the cliche thing, like have the lanes be the light brown, because your game can only be really weird in a few places or people won't be able to play it. Trap. I'm going to make it faster to change lane. That seems like a pretty universally helpful thing in this game. It's a cool idea. I really like the central idea, although my kind of first time user experience of going in here, most people are going to see selected starting attack and think this is a game where I'm the player fighting and what I'm selecting is for me. It's a really cool idea that you're basically upgrading the boss and then evading the boss, but we need that communicated here. Because at the moment, it's like, okay, we're going to start off with a side eye. And then we've used up this bit of real estate on the screen to tell the player some vague flavor stuff about the game world. And it doesn't help me understand the game. I'm torn because I love it when people make weird games. It's the angle I wish people came at game dev from. I want people to make strange experimental things because I think that's how we get new interesting games. And I'm not one of these channels that is here to sort of like monetize people's dreams of becoming indie developers and tell people you can make £1 million and stuff like that. I want, you know, I'm a games enthusiast. I want people to make cool, new, interesting games. And that means that people need to make weird stuff. And this is weird. It's deeply weird. But that means that any place where we can just use a convention to make things easier to understand, we need to make sure we do it, you know? That might be a good design exercise actually for this, is to find another weird game and go through it and think like, what in this game is actually quite standard? Like Katamari games, for example. Like open up a Katamari game, go through the menus and stuff and think, okay, if weirdness was a budget that you can spend in a game, where have they spent their weirdness budget? And where in the game is actually quite vanilla? But I just remember the entire game being really strange and unusual because it's Katamari. Tail attack. It definitely feels like one of the better uses of this sort of circle strafing mechanic I've seen. Because we're not shooting at the middle as well, which is how I've seen it used before. Not totally sure what the purple thing in the top right is. I'm starting to feel the benefit of that upgrade of my lane change speed. One of the things you need to watch out for in games with upgrades and builds and stuff is... Oh. Just making sure there isn't a thing that's always best. Because it kind of takes away the meaning of making those choices if there's just a thing that's always best to get. I would say as well, the billboarding of these characters makes them hard to see at certain angles, and when they're just coming around the corner at you, that can be a bit of a problem. Now, if there's some way to just make them a little bit thicker or do something so that they don't become invisible when they're side on to you. Or even just aim them at the camera, do a doom with them. I love that they're called side eyes. That's good. Oh. The jump doesn't feel very generous with getting over that. I imagine the jump is upgradable, but yeah, it just feels a bit... The timing for that circular thing from the middle feels a bit... It's just a bit stingy. Okay, the top right purple cooldown thing is for my jump, I think. It's got a picture of the character jumping on it, but it's quite hard to make out. Lane attack to target an entire lane after a delay. Okay, so I need to avoid that lane. So all of the enemies have this kind of scribbly pen feel to them, which is cool. I would be thinking of a way to make that have some narrative meaning. I'm not saying it needs to be like, we're in the pen world or whatever, but just... it's kind of giving sort of Miyazaki Shadow Monster kind of vibes, you know? Something like that. I never want to get Shockwave. I'm not good enough at that jump to want to do Shockwave. The music suits the gameplay very well as well. Because it's not too dramatic. Because this is kind of a thing where you do want people to get in a flow and zone out a little bit. It feels like that's the direction it's pushing in. Yeah, it's kind of not quite... Like, I don't like genres just being as a, oh, is this a proper one of these type thing. But I do feel like people who like Bullet Heavens are going to play this and then go, oh, that's not really a Bullet Heaven. Where are the bullets? I just said Bullet Helen, which would be a really funny screen name if you were called Helen and you played Bullet Heaven games. I'm trying to say Bullet Hell, really. So it's pitched as a Bullet Hell. We don't really have bullets. We have this kind of upgrading arena. So it is kind of mechanically one of those. But I do wonder if people would be attracted to that label and it should be called like a, I don't know. It's some sort of boss rush type thing where you're building the boss rush as you do it. Almost like some kind of tycoon game where you're building stuff that hurts you. Yeah, you can't rely on people reading the store page to learn how to play your game, especially with a demo. You know, people's level of investment in something that they're checking out for 10 minutes is just too low to not have it baked into the game. So I would always prioritize not necessarily building a tutorial first, but the stuff like tooltips or anything that shows people how to play the game as they're playing it is the best kind of return on your time when it comes to teaching people how to play your game. Because tutorials, you do them prematurely sometimes, and then the whole thing needs changing. The thing about things like tooltips is they're relevant to players even if they've been playing the game for 200 hours, because they'll stop playing at some point, come back, not be able to access your early game tutorial and still need those tooltips. So anything like that that makes it easy to understand the game as you play it or in the menus and stuff. So, you know, that first menu is a really good example. I would just make sure, so make all these options smaller on the screen. They don't need to take up that much space. And then put an information block at the top that says, in this game, you survive a boss. You have to upgrade the boss as you play. Choose the boss's starting attack. You know, maybe not that cheesy, but I would always start with just a dry description of what the player needs to know. And then you can come back to that later and you can go, okay, let's make this actually sound flavorful and make it match the fantasy of the game or whatever. But you kind of need to start with, but again, you've got a weird game. People aren't going to come to this knowing how to play it from playing other games. So you kind of have to give them a break somewhere. And this screen is kind of where it starts. The core gameplay is neat. I didn't like trying to jump over the shockwave. That was the point where, like, every other damage I took in the game felt like it was my fault, right? And this is a thing with kind of skill-based action games, is you want the player to feel like the game is fair, and when they lose in some way, it's their own fault. Every time I took damage in the game felt reasonably fair and felt like it was my fault, but the shockwave didn't. And that was just, like, visually, it felt like I'd cleared it. It looked like my jump had cleared it. I would, yeah, maybe make the jump bigger or have just more communication. So the other one is making the hitbox of the shockwave smaller, so that if you land on the edge of it, it's kind of giving the player the benefit of the doubt, right? This is a really common thing in AAA action games. They'll do stuff like, you know, the enemy's hitbox goes out to here, and you can stormtrooper shoot them and you can hit them there and it still hits them, but the enemies, like, it's much stricter on them hitting you. And there are certain types of games where you don't want to do that, like a very, very skill-based game. But at the moment, this feels less like it's meant to be super about, like, very, very, very tight precision controls, and more about getting to see all of this stuff upgraded until it goes really, really crazy. So I would be a bit kinder to the player in terms of, like, the size of hitboxes of things and stuff like that, because the shockwave felt quite unfair when I landed a jump that looked like I'd gone over it. So neat idea, very kind of quirky art style. And I think my only other broader concern with this is, oh, look, we've got something now. Basically, restarting the game felt very, very similar. So I'm going to try it with From All Sides as the first thing, because I don't think I had that before. And yeah, my kind of overarching concern with this game would be, how do we make it so that starting the game doesn't just feel like the same 1 minute over and over again? Because if you start a game in the same position and then you branch out into a skill tree, okay, that's variety. But if we're dying and restarting and dying and restarting and it's just always in the same level with the same enemies, then that's going to be a problem. But I've got this spiky guy now. And yeah, the visibility thing, I would consider with a lot of these enemies just billboard, like, not letting them turn so far away from the camera that you can't see them anymore. Can I jump over them? Hello, guys. Yeah, the jump just feels a little bit stingy when I try and jump over guys. Okay, let's move on. That is Distractor. That's neat. We're going to check out Drift now, which is... I've played before on our supporter stream because the developer of this is in our Discord, but it was signed up for the Indies Under the Knife and I felt like it fitted this. And it's gone on my second monitor, so that's how you know that it's an indie game. It's a Unity game. They love doing that. There we go. This is Vampire Survivors with a funky car. You can't slow down, steer by using A and D. Drifting empowers you for a while. Okay. So how do I actually trigger a drift? I haven't played this for a while. I played it a couple of months ago. It's feeling pretty good. Who was it in the chat who said they had a game in this genre? Sorry, I missed the name because I'm sort of half concentrating. If you let me know what it's called, I'll try and check it out before the end of this stream. I'll see if it's in the spreadsheet of doom. Because I don't think I'm going to be playing Drift for 45 minutes. Oof. Attack speed. The control design with this is really nice because you're just using A and D to turn, that's all it is. And then you press space to make the selection. So it's kind of like your thumb is already naturally there. This is what I mean about controller ergonomics. It's like sometimes people do controller design that is just based on another game. The one that I experienced recently that really bugged me was someone had done a game where you use WASD to walk and then you use the mouse to control the vision, and then they didn't use the click on the mouse for anything, and it's like, well, why involve the mouse at all if clicking is not going to do anything? I think sometimes we just reach for what another game does and we just uncritically copy it. Increase. Or just damage. Missile thrower. Okay, I might even just be able to Google that actually. Missile thrower. We'll check it out in a moment. It's been a while since I played this, so I don't really know what's changed. I know the dev has been working a lot on weapon upgrades. Music fits it so well. Oof. Right, one more run and then I'll go and find missile thrower. I think maybe I'm not paying enough attention to actually trying to drift. Yeah, I think a few people have said about the enemies just being cubes. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you've got a car, which kind of suggests a real-life situation. You maybe don't want to go down the route of it being people or cars, because that changes the vibe quite a bit. Like, at the moment, it just feels kind of goofy. The drifting feels great. I do think I think the set of colours doesn't totally go with the music and the stuff I'm thinking of, because the music is like 70s sort of Stevie Wonder funk, which kind of expect to see a bit more brown and purple in here or something. I feel like we've gone with the ape out, the teal and orange ape out colours, which is more sort of soul bass. This is a bit more like Soul Train type thing. But we're really kind of falling down the rabbit hole of art direction stuff here. But I think an interesting thing to do would be to change the colours after a certain amount of waves or something. That's what Ape Out does. I think it starts off with an orange ape on a blue background like this, and then there are points in the game where all of the colours switch. And because there's only ever 3 colours on the screen, they can all kind of switch relative. So like the apes and the ape's blood are always the same colour, the enemies are always the same colour, and then it can all kind of rotate. I think it's going to need something like that to stop it getting visually boring. Riku asking about making games when you can't draw characters. I mean, yeah, I would start with other people's assets and then change them as you go. So I've done that with my platformer recently. I started with someone else's animations, because I'm not great at drawing characters. I can draw other stuff, but I mean, the other thing is to just not try and build games that require skills that you're not interested in developing. There's a reason why lots of indie games don't have characters in, or have characters that are visually absent, right? So, can think of some big ones. So, Dredge, Blueprints, and what's the other one I'm thinking of? Pacific Drive. All sort of big high indie or AA games, whatever you want to call them, that I've been playing in the last year. None of them have animated characters that you control in an environment, right? Blueprints has characters in cutscenes. Dredge has characters you speak to who come up as portraits. But those 3 games, they don't have any characters in them that are used in the gameplay. And there's a reason for that. It's like the way you make a high quality game is you make your design decisions, or your decision about what to initially make, based on what you would be good at executing. And you can get good at executing character art if you really commit to it and you say, well, I've decided to go down this route. But it's all your decisions, and you can decide to make a game that doesn't have visible characters in. That's also how Mini Metro was made. The developers sat down when they did Ludum Dare Game Jam, and they made a list of constraints, and one of them was we can't have animated characters. So they, made the theme of it being about building train tracks, and then they went, okay, well, this visual style of the subway signs and everything is something we can do in terms of art, so let's do that. Let's make a game about building a subway, and then we'll use people's association with, like, what does the New York subway map look like, and we'll build the graphic design of the game out of that. Games don't have to have characters in, and every creative decision you make about your games is your own decision, but some of those decisions are going to lead to you making something of a poorer quality if you're kind of deliberately choosing to go down a route that requires skills you don't have. Games are an incredibly diverse kind of multimedia format, and if you keep having ideas for things you can't execute on your own, then you either need to commit to getting better at those things, you need to use other assets, or you need to work out a way to collaborate with people. But gamers are never going to like cut you some slack and go, well, they made it on their own, so it doesn't matter that that thing's rubbish. The people are only ever excited about a solo project when it's the quality of a big project, you know? People are only excited that Eric Barone made Stardew Valley on his own because it looks like it was made by a team of 30 people with lots of different talents and skills. That is Drift. That's definitely got a you can totally zone out to it kind of. I'm going to look for Missile Thrower. So we got through those pretty quick. Yeah, there it is. Can I play this in the browser? Is that... Oh, that's Pico 8. I think the reason I didn't put this on the stream was because I was saving up to do a kind of Pico 8 little games thing at some point. That would be why. What's going on here? This is really capturing everything I don't like about traditional bullet hells. So I think the like thrust a bit on my character is where the actual collision point is for the dodging, which is a good bit of visual design because it means I can focus on just avoiding things with that. So I kind of like that choice, but yeah, there's no way I'm going to get good at this without playing it a million times. That's very satisfying. Yeah, I think when it comes to learning art for games, there are obviously things that are very specific to games, but I think the people who are good at it and end up good at it just sort of see themselves as a general artist, and, you know, 3D art or pixel art is one of the things they do. So try not to get stuck in a position where the only time you make art is to make a specific asset for your game. You know, make sure you're doing other stuff and sketching and stuff. I quite frequently, at least once a week, I just sort of draw on my tablet. I've got Procreate on there, and I've also got a pixel art program. And sometimes I just sort of noodle and come up with ideas for things that might go in my game, and sometimes I end up putting them in as placeholder or whatever, but a lot of the time I just play around with colors and shapes and see what happens. Like someone said, drawing's a muscle. Like, using any kind of software is like a muscle as well, right? And the more you just sort of mess around and play with it, the kind of quicker you'll get, so that when you're doing something that really matters, you'll just be able to do stuff quicker. That's why game jams are good for programming as well, and for making design decisions quickly. Okay, I need to deliberately use the smart bomb on this, I think. This is pretty great, but yeah, it very takes us into full hell mode very, very quickly. I think the last one of these I really played was it Jamestown? And I think when they are initially this hard, it just makes the ramps so difficult to initially get into that I lose interest in trying to progress very, very quickly. Art's great though. Art, sound, love the little cabinet around it. There's lots to like here, and I imagine people that like these would like this, but there's something about just starting off with that level of bullet hell that is... Maybe it's meant to teach me to use the smart bomb, but then it just fills up again straight away. Riku, I am going to do a video about sound design in the next couple of weeks. Not really sound design, but sound tools. So my tips would be use something like this to start off with. So SFXer is like an online sound effect generator, and it does make sort of 8-bit sound, 1-bit sounds. But the thing I really like is it has these categories, and you can say, I want an explosion, and then you can play around with these. Then you won't get realistic sounds like this, but one of the things I generally like to see is, like, even when a game is in an early prototype, all of the sounds that allow you to understand what's happening in the game should be in it. And tools like this allow you to do that very, very quickly. So the game I'm working on, I sketch sounds in very, very quickly using a tool like this. And I just try and find something that fits what we're trying to do. So, okay, we're getting a... Is there a pickup? Yeah, so something like that for a coin. And then often I'll put these filters on to, like, thin the sound out a bit. So, you know, taking that filter down there just makes it really backgroundy. You can do stuff like that to thin the sound out. But you can use that. And the other one is literally getting something like Audacity, which is a freeware thing for sound recording. Yeah, have them as placeholder sounds. Just spend like a minute trying to get the sound close to what you think it should sound like. And you're not thinking about realistic sound, you're thinking about emotive sound. So you're thinking, okay, this is like a something hitting. So we'll go with an explosion. This is supposed to be like you get hit by a big thing and it hurts you. So we'll tweak these a little bit. You know, if it's happening all the time, maybe we'll make it a lower sound like this so it's less grating. If it's a big one-off sound, we can put it up there. You just kind of quickly do that and then save it and put it straight in the game engine. And you can sit there and make like 12 sound effects in 5 minutes that way. The other one that I do, which works a bit better if your game is cartoony, but I just load up Audacity and make sounds with my mouth. I think I have a session saved here from the other day, actually. No, I don't know where those have gone. But yeah, so sometimes I will use something like Free Sound Project where people upload sounds. But even then you need to edit them. And the thing with going through sound libraries is that you can end up spending ages and ages just looking for one particular sound that's perfect. So making them with SFXer or your mouth first is really, really good because you can just put them all in the game and then you've got the feedback in the game, right? And you've ticked one box of what sound is meant to do in your game, which is convey to the player that these things just hit each other, or you just collected one of these, or there's one of these over there. You know, like in Fortnite, they have the when you're near a treasure chest. All of the communicative stuff that the sound needs to do, you can get that done very, very, very quickly. And then you can come back in later and you can take those sounds out and swap them with something more realistic when you know that the game is worth doing that for. But earlier on, you do want to make sure the communicative and game feel elements of the sound are in there. So just doing it as quickly as you can with a generator like that SFXer, or doing it with your mouth, is a good shout. And sometimes I leave those in. So I'll just boot my game up to give you an example. Because I think I recently replaced... I didn't even replace the sound I had in. I had a sound for smashing jars, and it was like a synth going... like that, and it sounded like a cymbal being hit. And I added some new sounds, but I added them over it. I didn't get rid of the original sound. I ended up layering them together. So I'll just show you that as an example. It's not, again, the sound design in this is like, I think I've got this attitude to placeholders where if something is a placeholder, it should just be really ugly, like it's just a big pink box or something, so that players can't possibly confuse it for anything else. But what I've been doing recently is I just try and make things as close to okay as possible, as quickly as I can. And then if I feel like I've spent too long on it, I leave it and come back. But so the example of my sort of minimum viable product sound for smashing a jar was this. Okay, it's not a good sound, but it sort of fits the action. You can imagine seeing something explode and it making that sort of sound. And that had been in the game for like 2 or 3 months that I've been working on it. And then the other day I wanted to make that action more satisfying. So I went and I found a sample of someone smashing plates on Free Sound Project. And I put that in Audacity and I just cut it out into all of these different segments. So these are like... just also... these are all samples from the same thing. And then what I do is I left the original smash in there. The original shatter sound is still in the game. So every time we break a jar, I play this one, which was my original sound effect, and I pitch it up and down a little bit. But now that I'm kind of into trying to polish it and make it a bit nicer because I feel like the game has got legs and it's had some playtesting and stuff, now I layer in one of these on top. And that kind of works because of the style of the game. It's kind of got that Rogue Legacy. It's a retro game, but it has some modern art and audio aspects. So blending a 8-bit sound with a real sample kind of works in this context. It wouldn't work everywhere, but that's kind of one of the things, is that developing workflows for your art and your audio and everything that just fit what you're doing vibe-wise. So when I smash these jars, you can still hear that kind of arcade at the same time, but it's combined with the actual sound, with the recorded sound effect over the top. So it's almost like there are two layers. There's the layer of what the thing should actually sound like in reality, which you don't always need if a game is really, really cartoony or really, really low poly or whatever. And then you've got the kind of impact of what is the sort of cartoon video game version of this sound. And I just end up layering both of those things together because it kind of suits the game to have them mixed. Yeah. Big pink box is like, I mean, this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, if you feel like the art needs to convey some information, then I would work in stages. And yeah, it's like, okay, the first thing that the art needs to convey is that this thing is dangerous. So it's not a big pink box. It's like a red spiky box or something like that. Because that's generally how visual design goes. And I think if we look back to the first game I looked at today, there were like, sorry, what was it called? It was called Blood Moon. Yeah, if we look back at the screenshots of Blood Moon Survivors, because this is a really, I think the art style of this is really, really charming, and I really like it. But I also felt like when I was playing this, there's loads of choices here. You think of like Star Wars and you think of the red lightsaber, green lightsaber thing. There are loads of visual design choices here around like enemy projectiles and stuff, which kind of make them harder to pay attention to because they're not just doing the obvious thing and going red is danger. And I think if you were working in the kind of placeholder first sense, as I was playtesting this, I would be like, okay, the dangerous things are massive and red and yellow. So that you can just sort of like look at the screen and squint and go, okay, I can see where I need to move because all of the dangerous stuff. Whereas we've got, in this game, we've got like a mix between like how things look that are meant to be dangerous and how things look that are meant to be kind of treasure and stuff. And that makes it a bit confusing moment to moment. So yeah, I think that your kind of first placeholder is just like, it is a pink cube, and then the next stage is, what does this need to communicate? Okay, I need to communicate that this is treasure, so I'll make it bright yellow, or I'll make it bright blue, or something that looks like a friendly color. And then maybe if it's a spike trap, it just like quickly draw some spikes or whatever. But you want to get the kind of communicative element in there as quickly as possible, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, with my game, I had a knight as the character straight away, and then later on, I was like, the knight isn't doing any combat, so I'll make it into a golem so that it looks like a kind of more vulnerable character. You can work these things out very, very quickly if you sort of stick to those kind of constraints that we talked about earlier of not trying to do anything that's totally out of your wheelhouse, so that you don't end up wanting to have to make assets that you know you can't make yourself. Seamus, that sounds fun. Yeah, making a game that is just a little sound toy to practice sound stuff is cool. Yeah. I want to have a look at that Terraria boss so that we can see what you're talking about, because I think that's probably a good example of the type of thing. I don't like Terraria's art style.
Alright, let's see if we can line them up, and spiky balls straight down the throat. That is so satisfying.
Such a sort of fiddly game, and like really visually noisy.
Alternative to its crimson counterpart. The other way to summon the eater is to craft worm food at an evil altar using 15 rotten chunks that drop from corruption.
Just want to see the boss. I mean, I think the other thing that should be reassuring about this is a game that's making some of the mistakes I talked about earlier, and yet it's Terraria, and we all know what Terraria is, and it did really well, right? So you can never get these things perfect. I think it's more about working out where, like, I don't want to. The most business wanker term I can use for it is return on investment, right? Like, every time you sit down and you write some code or you make some art, you're working out what is the best way of spending your time, right? Even if you're not thinking of your game as a commercial project, you are spending your limited hours on the earth doing a thing, and working out what the most kind of efficient thing to do with your time is what design and production is. That's what designers and producers would do in a bigger team. It's like, okay, we've got a week left to program this thing and make some more art. What is going to lead to the most fun? And sometimes the thing that's going to lead to the most fun is adding a new thing, and sometimes it's going back to an existing thing and making it easier to understand or making it feel better to interact with. So you can never get the entire thing right. All you can do is get better at making those judgments about what to focus on as you're doing it. Cadenza has stayed up till 3:30, and now we're slandering Terraria. I liked the idea of Terraria. I like the monsters. I kind of like the art as art. Like, if I was watching this as a cartoon, I'd be fine with it. I just found it very fiddly to interact with. Like, one of the things that I'm following when I'm making Dirt World is you only have like Mario type interactions with objects where you can pick one big object up at a time and run around and throw it. I don't have an inventory. And I think there's something about this type of camera angle and pixel art and trying to do sort of individual world object interactions that I just find very, very fiddly. Like having an inventory of all of these crafting items and you drop them on the floor and then it's a big mess of pixels and stuff. I just find that really, really annoying from a UX point of view. Not even a game design thing. It's just like a kind of camera and controls type thing that I find irritating about it. What are you playtesting tomorrow? Is that Bulldogger? Sorry. Occasionally someone gets the kind of dark blue text on my stream feed and on my chat feed and I can't read it. And that currently is Bulldogger. I'm like, yeah, sorry, I can't see that. What are you playtesting? What are you running a playtest for? Just seeing what we've got in the rest of the month, because we've gone a bit faster than we normally would through this stream. Next week, we've got our patron stream, so anyone who's currently in the Discord can submit games to that. It was called the Community Monthly when I made this thumbnail, but we're doing it every 2 weeks at the moment. And then this time next week, we've got deck builders. I'm just going to quickly check what they are. Final Fantasy pixel art. Yeah, that's, you know, just draw over someone else's art for a while. I think people fall down this hole of thinking they need to be absolutely professional when they start doing something. And of course, like, if you steal some art and you use it as placeholder, you do absolutely need to unsteal it later on. I'm not advocating for that. But I think people really get into this professional cosplay thing of like, oh, I need to start acting like I'm a professional before I've even got to the point where I've got anything worth showing to the world, you know? Yeah. One of the games that got me my first job, so when I was 28, I'd been to grad school, I'd got my PhD, I'd done a bit of teaching, and I'd spent most of my 20s working, doing education or youth work. I used to do youth work where we did like music technology sessions, and we had this like bus. We'd go out on this little bus and like find some impoverished kids and make a beat with them or something on this bus. And then I went to grad school. I did a PhD about hobbyist game dev, basically. Like, I met a bunch of programmers and stuff, and I did biographical research with them about like how did games influence you getting into tech. That was my PhD. And then I've been making games as a hobby all the way through that time. And then when I was 28, I got the opportunity to apply for this job, which was an assistant production role at a local mobile firm. And I sent them a portfolio of games I'd made, and a couple of them were video games, but most of them were card games and stuff. And they had so much placeholder art from video games in. I'd made a card game where you were running a dating agency for sort of D&D characters, and all of the card art was the character designs from Pillars of Eternity, the portraits. But I said on the portfolio, I said, I did this, this, and this art is from here. It's like, I'm not selling the thing. It's like, yeah, things get quite far down the chain with stuff in them that shouldn't be in them, and people shouldn't be worried about that as long as they remember to take it out when it's relevant. Party game destruction simulator. That sounds fun. Destroying stuff is always fun. We had a student a few years ago on, I can't remember if he was in the third year of his degree. He was making a VR game where you are a giant mech. And for ages it was about protecting the city from a kaiju, and we kept saying to him, like, you do realize that destroying things is more fun than stopping someone else from destroying things. But like, imagine like having the tech to make a really good kicking over a sandcastle game, and then being like, in this game you must stop someone kicking over a sandcastle. No. Let the player do the fun thing. mini games about a historic person? Are we going to get like, what's that going to be? I'm intrigued. I want to smash stuff in games. Yeah. I mean, Cadenza, even the fact that you're thinking in time blocks is a good start. You're saying every 2 weeks we do X. Okay, that's good. That means you've got some sort of anchor in reality when you put a time on something. That's how you form habits, and habits are what produce things that are good, right? It's not like magic. It's just if you have a practice for something and you show up to practice every Wednesday night, you get better at the thing. That's just how it works. Yeah, these are the games that I have scheduled for next Thursday. You can check out before then if you wish to. We've got Goblin Gourmet, which I have actually played before, but I wanted to play it again and see where we'd got to, which is a cookery game where you play as a goblin that cooks things using dragons and stuff. We've got Mark My Words, which is a word building deck builder. Now, I seem to remember there is a tabletop game that did this about 10 years ago. I can't remember what it's called. Word building deck builder card game. Not Mark My Words. Paperback. There we go. Paperback is the game that did this with... How old is it now? When did this come out? It came out a while ago. Be interesting to see how Mark My Words differs from Paperback. It looks like they've gone down the kind of Balatro game show type route. We've even got some kind of slot machine stuff here, which is interesting. Paperback was... You had like these genre cards. There was something very funny about this game because the way that a word game interacts with the deck builder is, you know, you end up with a deck with the same stuff in, and you can ideally get into a loop where you just go the every turn. I've got a deck that's just T's, H's, and E's, and occasionally I get to make the or he, but mostly it's just the every turn. I'm the guy. That's what I do. So I'm going to be sort of interested to see what that is. Just looking back to find out about a historical game. He escaped from prison. Quartermaster during the... Yeah, that sounds like an interesting person to make a game out of. Cool. the meta. Yeah. And this is it. Which... This one seems to have quite an interesting, strange gimmick, but I don't quite understand that I'm going to have to play to understand. This it. The game is called This Is It, and that relates to a game mechanic that involves the card called This and the card called It. And I think it's really going to be one of those you have to play it to get what it is. But yeah, if anyone's got some time and they want to play something now, check out one of those. I really like these monster designs. particularly this guy. I can't see it is. I don't think there is an is. I think there's only a this and an it. I think that's how that works. I mean, yeah, thinking about your game name for a long time is not a bad thing. I think coming up with a good name for a game is very, very difficult. The hardest thing is letting go of a name for a game when it's not the best it could be, you know? And there's so many things to factor in. It's like, okay, you've got SEO. So if you have a very common phrase, like if you called your game sourdough bread recipes, you're just going to be beaten on Google by actual sourdough bread recipes. So you have to call it something that is just an unusual combination of words. Then you have to think about what the word title implies about the game. Like if you have a pun in the title of your game, like Mark My Words, that implies a tonal thing about the entire game, right? That implies to me this is going to be a slightly goofy game. And we talked about this actually, recent podcast. We were talking about this on our Blueprints episode. Where it's like, okay, this game is full of puns, right? And then the title of the game, Blueprints, is a pun as well. And that kind of creates a set of expectations around the tone of the game. Sour bastard breads. Mega bonk. Number wang. Oh, amazing. Oh, that's really cool. Not a Clue Game said that the game jam we did has put your team together. That's fantastic. I've never been good at that stuff either. I mean, a lot of the times when the two game jams we've done through the channel as a community so far have been a combination of stuff I would like to do and trying to get people to develop a skill that I think would benefit them. And in some cases, that's not going to work, and it's always good to hear when it does work. I think the thing about maintaining a team over a long period of time, whether it's a game dev team or a band or any sort of creative collaboration, is just to make sure you review every so often and you go, are we still happy with where we're going? And to have sort of what I call staggered commitments. So it's like, okay, we're going to work on this for the next 3 months up until that event. We're going to take our game to that show or something. And then we'll review after that and see if everyone is still on board. Because, yeah, so it's almost like dating. If you go on a date with someone and they're just so obsessed with wanting to find someone to marry that they can't objectively judge whether they like you or not, then that's not going to be a fun date, right? It's the same thing with working with people on creative projects. You don't want someone who's like blah, whatever, so blasé that they can't commit to anything, but you also don't want to be spending your time with someone that just demands you commit to doing something with them that's going to take up a big chunk of your life, right? It's the same thing with creative collaborations. Hi, Alberto. Thanks for popping in. Wait, I'm missing one of the puns in Blueprints. So it's blueprints as in blueprints with an S, which are what you use to build rooms. There's blueprints as in a member of royalty who is blue. What's the third pun? Is there another pun? We did a whole podcast episode about it, and I'm only aware of 2 meanings of that title after playing 95% of the game. I didn't know that. I prefer Seamus's theory that bloop, rinse, repeat. I didn't actually know that. Wow. See, this is what happens when you don't engage with any media around something when you're playing it. Because I was like, I do not want any spoilers for this game. I did not know that holly was that there was a type of holly called that. Because it's Mount Holly. It's the mountain, and there's the symbol of the estate is Mount Holly Estate, and it has holly on it. I didn't know that was anything to do with the title. Yeah, titles are hard. Coming up with titles for things is difficult. You do it prematurely, you get attached to it. I just randomly called the game I'm working on Dirt World because I think it suited the name. And then I did a very quick, is there anything called Dirt World? And it's like, there's basically a bunch of things to do with dirt bikes. So I feel like I'm far enough away that when I put it here and I stylize it like that, people can find it pretty quick. Dirt Rally. Am I going to get sued by Dirt Rally for making a pixel shit Metroidvania with the same name? I don't know. I'll be fine. Yeah. Well, I am going to log off in 5 minutes and do some stuff. That's very, very vague. Get on with planning next videos and stuff like that. I hope everyone has a good rest of the week working on whatever you're working on. And next week, we will have one of these on the Thursday. We'll be looking at those 3 deck builders I showed you. You can, if you're on YouTube, you can go on the stream ahead of time and grab the games. Some people complained that I put too many streams up at the start of the month. I will be rectifying that in October. What I will do is I will plan all my streams privately, and then at the start of each week on Monday, I'll put a post up and I'll put everything out then. So you'll only get 3 things show up on the feed instead of 12 things, because I know that was very upsetting for some people, which is understandable, but also, yeah, we don't know what the UX is going to be on your end of things when something like that happens. So I will not publicly schedule too much ahead of time. One of the things I will do, I will still schedule the streams at the start of the month, but what I will do is I will put a single YouTube post up on day 1 that just says what's coming up every Thursday. So developers who watch the channel, you will know when your game is coming up. It just won't show up as a stream until the Monday of that week. That's the plan. That's the plan. I've listened to your feedback. I've addressed the allegations that I made 20 streams go live at the same time, and it was very upsetting for some people. You know, I've learnt the error of my ways. This is my formal apology. I won't do it again, except when I do. And when I do, I'll pretend I never said any of this. Cool. See you all soon. Thanks for dropping in. We nearly got to 100 today. I see 94 viewers. That doesn't happen very often. So good luck with your projects this week, and have a good rest of your Thursday or whatever day it is where you are.